I had a session with an artist recently and we've done some cool things that actually made the vocal sit nicely in the beat, in the mix. And I thought that I'm gonna record a video on the topic because I remember when I was starting to mix vocals, it was always the hardest part for me, just making the vocals fit into place in the beat and for it to not be like overcrowded by all of the other elements of the mix. So yeah, I thought I'm just gonna make a video on it. Thankfully the artist agreed to show the beat. I can't show you the recorded vocals because the song hasn't come out yet, so you'll just have to trust me that it works. But those are all pretty simple things and I'm gonna explain them the best I can. So without any further ado, let's just get into it. And maybe first I'm gonna play you the full beat so you see what we're working with. And yeah, let's start with the basics. So the actual melodic elements of this beat are all pretty low. So the main melody is this pluck. And as you can hear, it doesn't have a lot of high frequencies. This as well. And then we just have the bass. Basically, all those elements of the beat sit pretty low in the mix and they don't have a lot of high frequencies, which is good for the vocal because your vocal actually sits in higher frequencies and the bass of your vocal is around 2 kHz. So you don't want to have too much elements there. You want to leave some space for the vocal. And to do just that, on the main melody, we've actually cut out some of the mid frequencies. And as you can see on the EQ here, the whole plug sits here kinda in that 100 to 500 Hz rate, which allows the vocal to freely be on top of it and not be overpowered by the plug. For the bass, we did this cool trick to, on the other hand, leave the space for the plug that sits pretty low for a plug, and we use this Pultec EQ, and this is probably the most popular trick with this EQ. You just boost the low and at the same time cut it with this Aten knob, and what it does, kinda makes like a cut around 400 Hz while boosting the actual low end or sub of the bass, which in our case is pretty cool because around 400 Hz sits the bass frequency of the plug. That's the main melody, so we had to leave some space for this. So this does that nicely while also adding a cool analog feel to the bass. Now, I'm not gonna talk a lot about this second plug because it's basically just a snare layer and it's in the background, so nothing really important happens here. But we've done a cool thing for these vocal chops we added here in the beat. If you have any other vocals than your vocal in the beat, which often happens in R&B or pop, the cool trick is to use some kind of stereo field shaper. In our case, I use Spreader because it's a native FL Studio plugin. Because when you're recording your vocals, you're using one microphone, it's always in mono, so it's gonna be in the middle and your main vocal always should be in the middle. So you can take the vocal chops or the ad-libs you recorded or background vocals and just put them to the sides, like see how this vocal is playing. It's very wide, so this vocal is on the sides, it adds a nice character and background, and your vocal, so main vocal, is in the middle and it's not fighting for a place in a song with the vocal chops. It's also low pass, so the high frequencies of the main vocal can cut through the mix better. And the one thing that can actually make this better is if you have FabFilter Pro Q, you can do something like this and do just a basic bell cut like this, pretty broad. Do it somewhere in the middle where the vocal usually sits and click the mid here. So it only cuts out the frequencies in the mid. And this is basically similar to what the spreader does. It just puts this all the way on the sides and the main vocal can be in the middle alone. And the last trick, or not really a trick we've done for mixing in this track, is the sidechain technique. So I used Fruity Peak controller and I layered it to all of the melodic elements. So when the kick hits, all the melodies go quieter. And we did this to leave some headroom for mastering because the kick is a pretty loud part, and when it hits at the same time with the vocal chops, with the bass, and with the main melody, and then with the vocals on top of it, it gets pretty crowdy, pretty busy. So because we did this sidechain, it allows us to have more headroom for the vocal to actually master it later properly. And I think as far as this beat goes, those are all the things I did to make the vocal sit better here in the mix. So if you've been struggling to do that with the beats you're recording on, I really encourage you to just buy the stems for the beat or ask your producer to send you the stems and just try any of those tricks in the beat, because it might work pretty good. I've been struggling with it for like the first year I was mixing vocals, and it was my biggest nightmare. So those are just some cool tips that I like to use to make the vocal sit better in the mix. And if you can't be bothered to do that alone, check out the first link in the description and we can work on your song from the ground up together. And yeah, as always, hope you found the video valuable and see you in the next one.